everybody. Welcome to Rachel's Reviews. This is a Hidden Gems podcast where we talk about the streaming services and some deeper cuts that you can find that are really worth your time. And we have so much fun doing this every week. This week we are back at Netflix. This is our sixth episode of Netflix Hidden Gems. And I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and Ryan is here.
Hey, Rachel, so great to be back with you again. You are looking absolutely stunning with that hair. Oh my God.
Oh, thank you.
Am I recording a podcast with with Mona Lisa? Like, seriously. Like, you're pulling it off, girlfriend.
Well, thank you. That's very sweet. I did. I finally got my hair cut and colored. I haven't done it since I don't think I've done it this whole year because I put it off. I was kind of putting it off in after Sundance and then everything exploded. And so I went over to my friend Stephanie's friend Shelly. She has a hair salon in her house, and so everything was very safe, and we did it, and she did an amazing job. So thank you.
Yeah.
That's very
My
nice.
hair's not all that complicated. I just walk in there and be like, just cut a little off and be like, zip, that'll be $10. Like that's it. Like, I'm not very messy when it comes to my hair. It's as
Yeah.
long as it doesn't get up and leave, like I'm fine with it.
Yeah. I've had the same haircut basically since I was a teenager, that I basically do. And so this was a little bit shorter than maybe I typically do, but I was really happy with it. As long as I can still put it up in a ponytail, that's the key. So before we dive into our picks this week, I thought it would be fun for us to give our little review of the trial of the Chicago Seven. It's a big new release on Netflix, and this is by writer and director Aaron Sorkin about the true events that happened with the trial of seven people on trial for protesting at the Democratic National Convention in 1968. And this is quite the event, quite the trial, quite the courtroom drama. What did you think, Ryan, about this movie? What did you think of it?
I don't think it's top tier Aaron Sorkin, but it's still very good. I'm a big Sorkin fan. I know, Rachel, you're kind of lukewarm on him. He's very hit or miss for you, but for me personally, there are very few of his movies that I'm like, I'm not a big fan of that. And if I had to do a ranking, I don't think Trial of the Chicago Seven would be like breaking the top tier, but it's definitely above average. I love the cast in this movie because I hadn't even seen a trailer for this, just so everybody knows. And so when I was watching this, it was just like me playing the guessing game of who can I spot the actor. And turns out this cast is absolutely loaded. You got Sacha Baron Cohen, Eddie Redmayne, who I adore, Yahya Abdul Mateen II, who was awesome in Aquaman. Jeremy Strong is in it. Mark Rylance is in it. My man Joseph Gordon-Levitt, sticking up for independent creators everywhere. Our boy Michael Keaton, who can do no wrong in mine or your eyes, and I'm talking to everybody at home. It just and it goes on and on. Frank Langella, who's been great for years. John Carroll Lynch, who was in one of my favorite Keaton movies, The Founder, and was also in Face Off as a very prickish prison guard. So, I mean, up and down the list, it's just excellent. And combine that with Aaron Sorkin dialogue, whose dialogue is basically consisting of excellent people saying excellent things for, well, in the case of Trial of Chicago 7, 2 hours and 10 minutes. It's like, this is a feast for the ears. And I was absolutely loving it.
Yeah. So I think that this has a lot of strengths. It definitely has its weaknesses. I mean, my problem with Sorkin is, I mean, I've never hated one of his movies. I've just never loved them as much as I feel like everybody else seems to love his movies. And so maybe this one, I feel like maybe I'm kind of maybe even a little higher than other people on it. I'm like right in the same. So it's like my normal reaction is what everyone else is having. My problem with Sorkin is that I feel like he writes great dialogue, but I feel like sometimes his characters are lacking, and they're a little one note, and I wish that they were a little deeper. than to be at that kind of masterpiece level is what I'm talking. Like, I haven't gotten rotten on very many of his movies. I just am never as excited as it seems like everybody else is about his characters. And so that's kind of my concern. And here it wasn't quite as bothersome to me because I didn't feel like the movie was really depending on the characters because it is an ensemble film. So they were kind of all working together as opposed to really like something like Steve Jobs, where that character needs to be fleshed out. It needs to be more than just this greedy guy. This, and so I think that the ensemble-ness of it worked for me. And it seems to be a thing this year that there have been a lot of movies made off of plays. And this kind of feels like that. Feels like it, I know it's not, but it feels like it's made out of a play. It's almost all in one room. And just the theatricality of it feels very like it feels very stagey. But I found some satisfaction in that, and there were some fun moments and some rah 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 kind of moments, and so overall I enjoyed it. And yeah, I mean, great cast. I thought they all did a good job. It's probably my favorite Mark Rylance that I've ever seen, because I'm not as into him as it seems like again everybody else seems to be. It seems like he gives the same performance in every movie. But he's good here, I think. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt. The slow clap is super cringy at the end, but especially by him. But nevertheless, it was a fun moment. It kind of almost felt Capra-esque to me.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of the ending of Mr. Smith Goes to
Yeah,
Washington. Like
yeah,
it really didn't need to be in there, but it's the come down from everything that we have just experienced.
yeah.
And Frank Capra understood that. That's why I say in all my reviews for Capra movies that he followed the philosophy of it doesn't matter how dark you get as long as the good guys get to win. And
Right.
and the good guys get to win in this case. And if I may provide a bit of a mild defense for Steve Jobs, because I love that movie, I think what the movie did I think what the movie was missing was that it failed to bring any nuance to Steve Jobs. And if you read into his life, you'll find that he's a very complicated person. He had a lot of flaws, but at the
Yeah.
end of the day, he had the best intentions in mind. The movie kind of missed some of that, but I think what you were missing, Rachel, in some of your analysis was that he always tried to do what was right, and he always had this chip on his shoulder of, okay, I was forced out of my own company, I'm going to start up next and I'm going to take it to him. He ended up failing, but at the end of the day he ended up exactly where he needed to be. So
Hmm.
again, mild defense, but a
Well, no, that's
defense
fine.
nonetheless.
So you saw more humanity in him than I saw. I felt like it was kind of, to me, it seemed like a 2 hours of kind of beating up on him. Like I wanted there to be one moment where of more humanity, where he was like maybe show the Pixar guys and their relationship with him or something. I don't know. I just and the way that it was set up with the three openings, I thought that was a sort of a strange narrative choice, with the three events. But I get it, and it's certainly well acted and well made. But I was just, it seemed like kind of a smear campaign, and I felt kind of, I don't know. I was just kind of like, couldn't you have shown more humanity to him? But I get that. Yeah, he was a very complex person, and even in Creativity Inc., they talk about how he was difficult. So it's not like, but he did have his friends as
Yeah,
well. But anyway,
Creativity Inc. is a phenomenal book, by the way. For
yeah,
any
it's
of
so
you who
good.
have not read it, I highly recommend it. I also recommend reading the book that Steve Jobs was based off of, Steve Jobs, written by Walter Isaacson. I read
Mhm.
that thing cover to cover. I think it could probably break my foot if I dropped it, but it was a thick book, but
Mhm.
it was endlessly fascinating, like just going through Steve Jobs' ascension, starting at Apple up in his garage with Woz, and then being forced out and starting up Next and that being a colossal failure, and then
Yeah.
just like starting Pixar and then finally being welcomed back into Apple again, and just it, I recognize that not a lot of people were fans of Steve Jobs. He was a bit of a prickly pear when it comes to his personality, but I think at the end of the day, he also had a lot of strengths, and I mean,
Yeah.
we wouldn't have these without him. So I think maybe we should show just a bit of gratitude.
Yeah. And I mean, Sorkin is I'm not going to say he's a socialist, but he's definitely on leaning that way. And so he turns these capitalists into these demons, whether it's Zuckerberg or Jobs, they're the worst. And
How dare somebody make money?
yeah, how dare. Anyway, but there's a very important scene in this movie with Michael Keaton, and that is what we are going to talk about for our best and worst this week. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure that you do. But what would you give out of if you were doing 5 stars? What would you give to the Trial of Chicago 7?
I thought about this for a very long time, and I think I would give it like 3 and 3/4 stars. If we're not doing quarters, I'll bump it down to 3.5.
I Okay. I gave it I actually gave it a 8 out of 10 on Rotten Tomatoes. So I was pretty excited about it. It's once you finish watching it, it kind of leaves you on that high. It's a very thrilling kind of ending. So there we go. That's the Trial of Chicago 7. So let us know if you've seen it, what you think of it, and where it lands for you in the Sorkin canon. Oh, all right. You ready to talk about some Netflix?
Let's rock and roll.
All right. Okay, so yeah, we have some really fun stuff. And the first film that I'm going to talk about is a film that I saw at Sundance. And this is called Dick Johnson is Dead, which is a very interesting title. But I loved this movie. This is a very interesting documentary because there's also sort of flights of fancy within it that you typically don't get in a documentary. But it's all about this documentary filmmaker, Kirsten Johnson, who is having to sort of deal with the fact that her father is getting older and getting dementia. And so she stages all of these ways of her father supposedly dying, and as a way of kind of processing that reality. And I really loved it. Dick Johnson is the best. He is the sweetest man. He reminded me of my grandpa, who I loved so much. And this is just a very heartwarming, thoughtful, funny film that's a different documentary than you've ever seen quite before. And I highly recommend it. Kirsten, she was so amazing at Sundance. She did such a great Q&A where she walked down the aisles and was taking questions and was just so great. And so I think I liked it even especially because of that. But even aside from that, it she's made something I think really special and unique to honor her father. So, and he, as far as I hear, no, he is not dead. Spoiler alert. But it's all about dealing with that.
Yeah, I had never heard of this one. The first time I heard it was when, Rachel, you wrote your Sundance wrap up, and I was reading that, and I was scrolling through it, and I'm like, Dick Johnson is dead. Like, that's such a weird title for a movie, but it sounds really interesting. Is
Yeah.
this like an actual documentary, or is it made like a documentary feel?
Yes, no, it's an actual documentary, but there's like flights of fancy, is I would say, where like you see him getting hit in the head with a air conditioner, and then there's like a pool of blood or whatever, and then it zooms out and you see that it's the special effects in the movie making and everything like that. And so she keeps doing things like that as a way of kind of sort of processing the experience of like what it's going to be like. And then there's also sort of like flights of fancy of him being in heaven and kind of partying with the angels and stuff like that. And so it's very different. It's very unique. There's a whole they actually like stage his funeral, and his best friend gives this speech, and you are gonna cry when you hear that speech. It's so good. And yeah, it's all about sort of examining death and dementia and life and all of that. So
It sounds fascinating. It
yeah.
is it kind of like breaking the fourth wall type stuff?
Yeah, there's some breaking the fourth wall, and just some fictional moments mixed in with the documentary. So some I can't think of a way to say it, but like flights of fancy, sort of imaginations and
Oh,
of what might it be like.
like visions.
Kind of, yeah, yeah. So if I think the trailer kind of shows it pretty well, but he's such a lovable man, and he was at him and his friend who speaks at the funeral were both at Sundance and smiling and happy and everything.
Now, are
And
Kristen Johnson and Dick Johnson their mother or not mother daughter, father and daughter?
yes,
That's IRL.
yes, yeah. In real life, that's her dad, and she's having to kind of her dad is moving in with her, and he'd been a psychologist his whole life, so his perspective is especially kind of thoughtful and interesting about all of this. And so yeah, they're having to adjust to having him in their house, and like I said, he's getting dementia. How do they deal with that? So, and she's a neat lady. I really loved her. She was so cool.
Yeah, I remember last year having to go through my grandfather's passing, and it wasn't fun. Like
Yeah.
I'll just spare everyone the details, but I guess we all deal with death in our own ways, I suppose.
Yeah. So I think you would like this. It really rang true for me after having lost both my grandmas last year. So I haven't watched it again since Sundance, I have to say, but I am I think I still will like it. But yeah, one of my favorite movies of 2020 still. So, what about you? What's your first pick?
So my first pick is a TV series that ran from 2015 to about 2017 or so. It's based off of the Thomas Harris novels, and it is Hannibal. This is this is a TV show adaptation of Thomas Harris's classic novels about Dr. Hannibal Lecter and Will Graham. Dr. Hannibal Lecter, as we all know, was from The Silence of the Lambs, played brilliantly by Anthony Hopkins, and Hopkins played him several times, all the way up to, I believe, Hannibal Rising. But in this TV show, Dr. Lecter is played by Mads Mikkelsen. I'm a big Mads Mikkelsen fan. I think he's consistently great in everything he's in. My favorite Bond villain is Le Chiffre. He's in this great movie called The Hunt. He's been in a lot of quality stuff. Will I forgot his name. Will Graham is played by Hugh Dancy, and he's really good as well. I find that the best relationship between Will Graham and Hannibal Lecter is one where Will Graham is somebody who is just barely good. Like he's got a lot of demons in his head, but always is like walking the razor's edge between good and evil. He's good, but just barely. And Dr. Lecter is somebody, well, in the case of this show, somebody who's very charismatic. He's very well liked, but we all know deep down inside he is Hannibal the Cannibal, for lack of a better term. This is a very well made show. Like I said, Mads Mikkelsen, Hugh Dancy are both great. Lawrence Fishburne is awesome as Jack Crawford. I think all of the portrayals of Jack Crawford over the years have been great, whether it's Scott Glenn in Silence of the Lambs, or I can't remember the one that was in Manhunter, but they was all really good. And Lawrence Fishburne does a really, really good job. Like when you need someone to be stern but also likable, you call Lawrence Fishburne. He was Neo in the Matrix. He was Perry White in the DCEU. Like he's great. Um, this show was rather notorious for being canceled in season 2, and basically the fans pulled a Lucifer and were like, "We want the show back. We want it back," and they ended up getting one more season out of it. It's only 3 seasons, but it's 3 quality seasons. I wish it were still going, but we can't always get what we want. But Rachel, have you heard of this show?
I've heard of it. I've never seen it, but I've heard of it and heard that it's very well made,
It
very well
is.
done. Yeah. Good. Okay, so my next pick is also a series, and we're going to talk about Virgin River. And I might have already talked about this. I couldn't remember. I don't think so. But anyway, Virgin River, it is a really fun series that is about this woman who has kind of a troubled past, and she goes to become a doctor in this small town, and the doctor that is there doesn't want her there, resents her being there, and but she just pushes on through. And of course, it's got all the quirky members of this small town, and she ends up meeting Jack, who owns the local bar, and he's kind of rough around the edges but sweet. And they have, I don't know, there's just various things happen with the town. It's really sweet and also sad, and also it's kind of got the drama. It's got it's got everything you want in this kind of show. If you like something like Heart of Dixie or Men in Trees, which I loved, that kind of show, even Parenthood, even though that's about a family, that kind of tone and that kind of show, then you'll like Virgin River on Netflix.
Is this more of a is this more of a romantic drama or a romantic comedy?
Romantic drama. Yeah, because there's a lot. She's got a lot of demons in her past with that have caused her to come to this small town, and grief and dealing with all those kind of things. There are definitely romantic comedy moments for sure between her and Jack, and also just between the different kind of wacky characters of this town. You kind of have all of that. There's a kind of a fun mayor, the other doctors, this grumpy old man, and so there's some comedic value there. And so yeah, it's I'd still call it a drama though.
Yeah, it sounds like something my mom would like, and my mom's and I's tastes tend to align more times than not. So
Yeah.
that sounds great. I'll definitely be looking that up.
Alexander Breckenridge is the lead. She's really good. Martin Henderson. I have a review of it on my channel. My only real flaws with the series is there's a big age difference between Martin Henderson and Alexander Breckenridge, and I think that hurt the chemistry a little bit as our main lead couple. But then also there's a whole sort of plot about this drug ring. I don't know how else to say it. That's outside of the town, and I all of that part didn't really work very well for me. But other than that, I really enjoyed it. It's a nice little
Well,
binge.
it's only 10 episodes, so it'll be quick.
Yeah, I actually watched it while taking down my tree last year for Christmas.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah. So what is your next pick?
So my next pick is an anime series. This is from 2006, and it is called Death Note. I have seen very few anime in my life. I'm slowly working on that. I've seen most of Dragon Ball, and of course I've seen Death Note. That's why I'm recommending it, because it is very good. The story is relatively simple. This teenager named Light, yes, that is his name, discovers this book that is called the Death Note. It is given to him by a god of death known as Ryuk, and Ryuk basically says, "You write someone's name down in that book, and 2 or 3 days later, they die of a heart attack." And so the moral dilemma begins as, does he take advantage of this, or does he just leave it alone? And it's one of those shows where it's like, does he tempt fate by doing this and becoming essentially a god, or does he use it for other purposes? This has only one season. It has about 20 plus or so episodes, but every episode is very well done. It is in Japanese, so you'll have to read the subtitles, but I imagine our audience is incredibly smart and above average, and nobody would mind doing that. Uh, this was made into a terrible Netflix movie. Please, for the love of God, do not watch that version. It's so bad. Watch this version. This is the quintessential Death Note and the only one that truly counts.
I've heard about that, and I heard about the the version live action. Ugh.
Willem Dafoe saying you can't write someone to die by getting eaten by a shark off the toilet is just needle
Uh.
right in my eye.
Very good. All right. So my next choice is also another series, and it's called Romance is a Bonus Book. And this is a K-drama series. It's the first K-drama series I ever watched. I did a special on at Hallmarky's podcast with my friend Sui from the K-pop Converters. We had kind of an off week where we didn't have anything to cover, and so we did this K-drama episode. I'll put a link in the description if people want to watch that or listen to it, because I think it was really interesting and something different. And so I watched this K drama, and it's really interesting and really sweet and funny, and a chance to watch something from a different culture. If you like rom coms, if you like that kind of a thing, it's about this woman who has been away from the workforce and is now divorced, trying to get a job, and she ends up getting a job working in the same publishing house as her kind of BFF guy. And it turns out he's kind of had a thing for her all these years, and so things there's you get a lot of romance, and it's basically like a workplace romantic comedy kind of a thing. And so it was my first time ever watching a K drama, so that was really fun, and you can watch it on Netflix.
Yeah, I've been looking to go into more Korean stuff because of Parasite. That
Yeah.
movie was so excellent that it's like, oh, this is a whole nother world out there. And I've seen Train to Busan. It's fantastic, and still haven't seen the sequel, though I have been meaning to. So
Yeah.
I've been trying to hunt down more Korean stuff because it just seems like they're doing a lot of cool stuff. They're like Hammer in the UK during the 1950s. They were just working on a whole nother level.
Yeah, definitely. Well, what do you have next?
So my next choice is a Netflix movie. It's from 2017 and it is called Gerald's Game. This is based off of the book by Stephen King, and it tells the story of a married couple played by Bruce Greenwood and Carla Gugino. They're going off to a secluded log cabin for the weekend to try and spice up their relationship, including some, well, sex games. Like, I don't have anything else to say other than just sex games.
Right.
And so, as they're about to get ready, Bruce Greenwood chains Carla Gugino to the bed with a pair of handcuffs, and as he's about to start doing the thing, he has a heart attack and he dies, which leaves Carla Gugino basically handcuffed to this bed with no cell phone, no water, no anything. She just has to stay there, and the longer she's there, the more she is confronted by her inner demons and her very tragic past. Stephen King books can be kind of hit or miss. I like more of them than I dislike them, but sometimes the movies that are based off of them can be just out and out laughably bad. But where Gerald's Game does stand out is one man, Mike Flanagan, the best horror director going today. He's recently made a splash with The Haunting of Bly Manor. He's also done The Haunting of Hill House. He also did Oculus, which was one of my favorite horror movies of the 2010s. Like, he's been doing a lot of great work. He did Doctor Sleep, which is another Stephen King book. So like he's basically over 9,000 at this point. He cannot be stopped. And Gerald's Game was one that I feel like got under the radar, but I think everybody should check out at least once because it is fantastic. Bruce Greenwood is normally somebody that I associate with being the very likable but serious guy who's been through a lot but is always willing to offer you a pearl of wisdom. This time he's just a real jerk. And it took me a while because it's like, wow, like Bruce Greenwood is never like this. And it turns out he actually has a lot of depth to him. And Carla Gugino, who I've been a fan of for a very long time, in even terrible movies like Sucker Punch from Zack Snyder, she's the best part, and she's the best part of this movie as well. She's essentially tied to this bed or handcuffed to this bed. So all of her acting has to be done while she is essentially stuck in this bed without literally much to do except for flashbacks. And props to her, she absolutely crushes every scene that she is in. I won't go into any spoilers because honestly, it's best if you don't see any trailers or spoilers for this. But just it will leave you stunned. My one problem with the movie is the ending. It's one of those sweet cream on an ice cream sandwich. What in the blue hell was that kind of endings? Like it'll leave you like just it almost ruins it for it.
Uh-huh.
It's
Oh,
one of those
bummer.
endings that almost ruins it. But thankfully, Mike Flanagan is a very steady hand behind the camera, and like the rest of the 99% of this movie is top of the charts.
Cool. I've heard of it. I've not seen it, so that's really interesting. All right. Well, mine, as you like to say, is a hard left turn. Uh, we're talking about either the Pirates or Pirates Band of Misfits, depending on where you live. And this is from the folks over at Aardman. And this is a really funny, charming stop motion animated film about this band of pirates led by this pirate king that are a mess and always get into trouble. And my favorite, I think, joke of the whole movie is the little monkey that has all the cards with that have is always pulling up the correct sort of the commentary on these cards at just the right time, and there's a lot of funny jokes with that. And you have great vocal cast and the incredible attention to detail that only Aardman can do. And a lot of people haven't seen it, and it's really charming and funny. And so I think people should give it a shot.
Yeah, Aardman is kind of like an Aardman movie is kind of like pizza. Even the kind of ha 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 ones are still like better than 90% of the animated movies that we get like in a given year. And I'll admit the Pirates is one of the ones that I've seen the least. I've seen more along the lines of Chicken Run and Flushed Away and any of the
Mhm.
Wallace and Gromit stuff more than this one. But I do remember loving it because, well, I'm a fan of Aardman. I'm an Aardman mark, basically. This has a really, really good cast in here. Hugh Grant is in it. He's kind of been on a bit of a comedy streak with like this and Paddington 2. Like he's
True.
basically been on a bit of a comedy run as of late, and that's always nice. Martin Freeman, who I'm a big fan of from The Hobbit and from Sherlock, he's really cool. David Tennant, one of the doctors, he's in there and he's really cool. So, yeah, this is one of the more stacked casts of any
Yeah.
art picture. And normally they get some pretty big names. Like in Chicken Run, they had Mel Gibson, which he was like one of the biggest things going. Just in
Yeah.
Braveheart, like he was on top of things. So yeah, definitely recommend this one because I mean it's Aardman, so of course I'm going to recommend it.
Very good. So what do you have next?
Yeah, one more note on that: Aardman and Leica deserve more respect. Let's
Yeah,
make
definitely.
let's make that
And
a
I just
hashtag.
love stop motion. And I've seen some of the I've seen some of the panels of just the sets of that they made for particularly for pirates, and the attention to detail in the ship and in some other things is just amazing.
Yeah. So
So
my next choice is my most recent movie on the list, and it is Goosebumps 2: Haunted Halloween. From what I've been able to ascertain from looking at Letterboxd and Twitter and all that, is that nobody's really a fan of the Goosebumps movies. I think I'm an island of one when it comes to these. Like
I liked the first one.
the first one is not it's not like it's not cinema, like it's not like Citizen Kane or anything, but for someone like me who read the R.L. Stein books growing up and going into that movie, I was quite frankly surprised that they were able to turn it into something at least kind of watchable, like even good. And in the case of Goosebumps 2, I like this movie not for anything profound in terms of story or characters or anything of the sort, But I love this movie for the simple fact that it is dripping in Halloween atmosphere. Like, you cannot watch this movie and say to yourself, you know, they certainly captured the feeling of Valentine's Day. Like, no, it's a Halloween movie through and through. It embraces that, and it absolutely owns it. The villain in this movie is my favorite part. It's the little dummy guy, and when I hear people say, "Oh, I hate dolls and ventriloquists," I'm like, that's a weird thing to hate. But then I see this movie, I'm like, now I understand. And he has a lot of corny one-liners, but they just happen to work. And there's a lot of fun effects and funny jokes in here, like killer gummy bears. I've never been able to look at a gummy bear the same way ever again, especially those tall ones, like in those three
Yeah.
pound ones. I'd be like, get that thing away from me. But but yeah, Goosebumps 2 is a relatively easy watch. It's not even 90 minutes long, it's 89 minutes. But it's dripping in Halloween atmosphere. It's got a really fun story. It gets in, it gets out, it knows what it wants to be, and it succeeds.
Yeah, I can't remember if I gave it if I went fresh on that one, but it does have some fun qualities, and I definitely went fresh on the first one. Okay, so my last pick is a one of my favorite little sort of surrealist comedies. We're talking about Stranger Than Fiction, and this is I really love this movie. Will Ferrell plays this man who wakes up one day and he has a voice in his head that's narrating his life and telling him what he's doing, and it's Emma Thompson's voice in her head, and I mean in his head, and he starts to sort of research it with Dustin Hoffman, who is a literature professor, and because he thinks that this voice is telling a story, and so there's a lot of in there about like what kind of story are you telling in your life, and Maggie Gyllenhaal plays this kind of angsty baker, and there's a really cute scene where he brings her flowers, and it's all different kinds of flower. It's really cute, and he starts to kind of come alive as he starts to think about his story and what his story is, and it has a great cast. Like I said, Will Ferrell in a more serious role, but still there's some funny parts, and Dustin Hoffman, Emma Thompson, Queen Latifah is in it. It's really good, and I don't know, I just love the idea that kind of he realizes at one point that like he's not telling a good story in his life, and what's he going to do about it, and so I like that idea. Like if somebody were going to make a book about your life, would you want to read it? Is it a good story? And I think that's an interesting idea. So I really love it. I think it's really good.
Yeah, this is a movie that I had always heard nothing but good things about, but just never saw. I think this came out around the time where I wasn't the biggest fan of Will Ferrell. I think he
Hmm.
can be funny, but for like every Elf or Talladega Nights, there's like two or three other movies where it'd be like, are you even funny? Like, what are you doing? And so,
Hmm.
judging from the sound of what you've been saying, this seems like some where he's actually kind of likable, and in that
Yeah.
case, I'll definitely have to take a look.
And he's a IRS agent. And he still manages to be likable.
Nobody likes those guys.
No. Uh, and so yeah, I recommend it. I think it's really good. So, what is your last recommendation?
So my final pick is from 1982, and it is one of my favorite movies to watch around this time of year, Poltergeist. There is a very prevalent urban legend surrounding this movie that is in many ways far more fascinating than the movie itself. To make a long story very short, this movie was being made around the same time as a little movie called E.T. the Extraterrestrial. You may have heard of it. Steven Spielberg was supposed to direct not only E.T., but also Poltergeist. But the problem was is that Poltergeist was being distributed by MGM. E.T. was being distributed by Universal. And so Spielberg was under contract with Universal. And so he had to back out of doing Poltergeist because of the legal hornet's nest that he would have stepped into if he had done it. So he ended up going into more of a producer's role, and he elected his friend Toby Hooper director of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre to direct it. However, in subsequent interviews throughout the coming decades, people have said that Spielberg directed more of the movie than he likes to let on. But the man himself has said, "This is a Tobe Hooper movie. I just produced it." It's one of those legends that is just lovely to think about. But Poltergeist is definitely a Spielberg movie done through a Tobe Hooper lens. This is not as violent as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. However, there are definitely some moments where you're like, oh God. Like there's a dream sequence which involves a guy picking at his face. I will go no further. I'm sure you all can put two and two together in your head. And then there's another one where it's just where I'm sure it instilled a fear of clowns into an entire generation of kids. But why I'm recommending this movie is that when you strip it all away, strip all the horror elements away, this is a Steven Spielberg movie, and and if he had directed it, I don't think it would be in his top tier, but it definitely has the heart of a Spielberg movie with the horror of a Tobe Hooper movie. Craig T. Nelson is in it, and he's great as usual. I think his entire career has been playing fathers, which I mean, he's always been good at, so, go with what works. And what I love about this movie is that the family that they present love each other. Like the sisters and the brothers, they all love each other. The husband and the wife love each other. A trend that I noticed throughout the 80s was that they like to present like separated families or divorced families or fathers or mothers that were no longer in the picture. But in Poltergeist, you actually see a pretty happy family and they work through all of the crap that they have to go through together. And when they do eventually succeed, it's one of those fist pump in the air kind of moments. It's great stuff. So Poltergeist is definitely, I wouldn't say it's underrated because there's a sizable chunk of people that love this movie. However, if you have not seen it, I do recommend it, though
Yeah.
there are definitely some hardcore moments, but just moments.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to check it out. It's definitely on my list of horror films to finally watch. I just watched Halloween, so I'm getting there. I'm working on it. So very good. Well, there you go. That is our picks for Netflix. Let us know what you've been watching on Netflix. What are your favorites? We'd love to hear in the comment section or on Twitter what you have been watching. And Ryan, where can people find you?
They can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at RyanCam20. And then there's, of course, my YouTube channel, RyanCam, it's movie reviews. I'm coming to the final stretch of Scary Mania. Yesterday, I uploaded my video on The Exorcist. And then today, I'm going to be dropping, uh, if I can remember the running order, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And then I'm going to be finishing out the month by talking about the 80s, the 90s, and of course, the horror movies of today. And then, of course, I'm still going with the AFI project. Midnight Cowboy is in the editing suite. It's just got to be finished and rendered, and that's going up sometime next week. And so I've got a lot of content coming your way. I'm going to be talking about The Mandalorian when that drops. So now's a good time to subscribe.
Definitely. Make sure y'all are checking it out. And make sure you're following me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Please check that out. And make sure you follow the Hallmarkies podcast. We are starting Christmas coverage. The first movies are this weekend, so it's coming. And we're really excited about it. And so make sure that you are following us there. We're going to have tons of cool interviews, tons of cool things going on. So check that out. And thanks again. And check out our Patreon group. We really appreciate that support. We also have our merch store, which has tons of fun designs. So check that out as well. And thanks, everybody. And we'll talk to you all next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.